What makes an Odyssey? Every once in a while, I play a game, read a book, or watch a movie that leaves a real impact on the way I play Dungeons & Dragons. This past weekend, my wife and I watched Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and controversial take, I really liked it. As a dungeon master for the past decade or so, I can't help but be inspired by a movie like that, and it immediately makes me want to start up another D&D campaign. Not to run the Odyssey though, but to run an Odyssey. I've been toying around with the idea of running an Odyssey in D&D for years, and one thing I've noticed from that research is that every Odyssey, no matter the setting, is built on the same essential elements. My name is Sam, I'm a dungeon master and former teacher, and in this video, we're gonna look at 3 wildly different adaptations of the Odyssey story structure. Nolan's Odyssey, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, and Frodo and Sam's journey through Middle-earth. Spoilers ahead for all 3. Along the way, we'll use those stories to identify 7 essential elements you need to run an Odyssey at your table. This is Tabletop University. If you want to run an Odyssey at your table, you don't have to watch this whole video. I've included a streamlined PDF, which is linked in the description in case you are a reader, not a watcher. You do not have to pay for it, but liking this video and subscribing to the channel goes a long way. Let's embark. At its core, an Odyssey is a journey, and we don't want any characters who are slowing it down. For a story like this, players can't just make a generic character, you have to make a traveler. At character creation, players should create characters that have a reason to move, of which there are 3 basic types. Number 1, running towards something. This could be a mission, treasure, freedom. There are honestly about a million options here, but every single character has to have at least one of these. Number 2, running with something or someone. At the beginning of the Fellowship, Samwise's entire motivation is to follow Frodo, just as Eurylochus and the rest of the crew are following Odysseus. Number 3, running from something. Ideally, this should be something overtly powerful, as there's almost no greater motivator than fear. Some great options here are bounty hunters, a rival faction, or a governing body, like the sheriff in Oh Brother Where Art Thou. Oh Brother double dips here, combining the fear of the sheriff with the goal of Everett's treasure, which only makes it better. In D&D terms, the Dungeon Master has twice as many tools to use when it's time to get that story moving again. Travelers are a group of heroes that all have a real reason to get somewhere. If there is a disagreement within the party, it should be due to differing ideas on how to get there, not whether you should go at all. A compelling reason for your character to move forward is what takes you from a character to a traveler, from a participant to a protagonist. Now, where are we going? Almost every Odyssey has a compelling but fixed destination. Your travelers must know where they're going from the very beginning, even if they have no idea how to get there. This really should be the focal point of your session 0, to make sure the players make characters that actually want to go to your destination and have a real reason, like the 3 we just mentioned, that will endure through the entire adventure. In return, the destination has to be compelling and rewarding enough to keep the travelers moving forward. Odysseus is sailing for Ithaca to see his family, Sam and Frodo go to Mount Doom to destroy the One Ring, and the Chain Gang try to make it to Everett's cabin where he stashed the treasure.
What you have in mind when you stole it in the first place?
I have no plan.
Well, that hardly sound like you.
As you can tell, the setting of the destination really doesn't matter. Travelers occur in all types of stories. One of my favorite Odysseys, Snowpiercer, has a simple setup with a very simple destination. The entire thing takes place on a train, and our travelers start at the caboose and work their way towards the engine. It's amazing and would make a phenomenal D&D campaign.
Don't mind me. Back to work, everyone. Back to work.
In Mad Max Fury Road, the convoy drives to the Green Place. In 1917, Schofield and Blake hike across enemy territory to deliver a message to the front lines. In Zombieland, the destination is a theme park, and in Finding Nemo, it's 42 Wallaby Way. All of these Odysseys work because the travelers have a clear destination, and hopefully I've made my point by now, it works across any setting. If you have a favorite Odyssey setting, drop it in the comments below so the rest of us can have more inspiration for our next campaign. While the clear destination is what separates an Odyssey from other types of adventures, that doesn't mean that the road there has to be straightforward. If anything, it's the opposite. The destination, while essential, isn't what makes an Odyssey memorable. It's the diverging paths and the places you choose to visit along the way. This next element is deceptively simple, but islands are the reason a story like the Odyssey works. They allow the journey to feel full and populated, and they present fun choices for the players without the dungeon master having to know every square inch of it, like in a hex crawl. You can take a vast expanse of nothingness, and because of the clear destination, it allows you to place meaningful islands right in the way of your players, and intentional forks in the metaphorical road. This is what's referred to as a point crawl, but honestly, it reminds me of the branching storylines from the Choose Your Own Adventure books that I was obsessed with as a kid. They have these little branching pathways where you decide between 2 or 3 options, then you turn to the corresponding page to see where you ended up and what the consequences were for your choices. I honestly think that these laid the groundwork for me immediately falling in love with role-playing games in college once I, learned of their existence. Point crawls go way back to the genesis of D&D. There's a couple great blog posts by people much smarter than me that I will link down below. There's also a phenomenal video on point crawls by Dottie over at Mystic Arts, and I think this is the best method for running the travel in an Odyssey as you go from island to island. The choices are what make the islands interesting. You should give your players some information on what the benefits and risks are of each island so they can choose their own adventure. Let them be working off rumors, legends, and hearsay, not exactly facts, and make sure not to give them an obviously easier option because they're just gonna choose that every single time. Borrowing Dottie's example from Lord of the Rings, when the Fellowship start their quest, they know 3 bits of information at the beginning of their point crawl. The dwarves in Moria haven't been heard from in a very long time.
Let's go through the mines of Moria.
The Gap of Rohan is close to enemy territory.
Rohan takes us too close to Isengard!
And travelers freeze to death on the mountain pass all the time.
We're gonna pass over the mountain. Let us go under it.
Ideally, like in this example, your islands should all be different, not just in appearance, but in the challenges. If all 3 of these options were just different versions of a fight, it kind of defeats the purpose of the choice. You can go with a political challenge or a rescue, like in O Brother Where Art Thou. The Odyssey has escapes, like the Cave of the Cyclops, and time wasters, like the Lotus Flowers.
That's really good.
Let's never leave!
Sam and Frodo deal with horrors in the Dead Marshes, and there's always a time and place for a quick heist. If an island is particularly interesting, there is a small danger of it becoming the main focus as your players get invested in a stop instead of their destination. But lucky for us, the Odyssey comes with an element that will keep them moving forward. Before we get to the element, it doesn't hurt to have this epic journey actually sound like an epic journey. That's where this week's sponsor comes in. Hitplay Pulse is a companion app for D&D, other board games, and TTRPGs that makes your tabletop adventures sound like a movie. The app comes complete with sound effects and ambiances and soundtracks for a variety of locations, but the best part is that you can get them all together in one cohesive collection called a theme pack. No more battle music playlists that are all over the map. And when you're talking, the app's focus mode automatically removes the speaking frequencies from the music, so you don't have to keep a hand on the volume button. The thing I like the most about it is that their soundtracks have different stages, so as the fight goes on and gets more intense, the music can seamlessly change based on what's actually happening at your table. Not when your random playlist decides, but when you want it to at the perfect moment. It's been selected by Kickstarter as a project they love, and is handcrafted by actual human beings without generative AI. If you want to make your next adventure sound like an epic journey with music that adapts to your playstyle, you can use the link in the description below to become an MVP supporter. This will secure early access to the app and exclusive Kickstarter rewards before they launch. Now, back to the video. In every Odyssey, there is an ever-present threat looming, and each day the heroes delay, the chance of their immediate failure increases. Odysseus is traveling back to Anne Hathaway before she marries one of her suitors. If he delays too long, she'll be married and he'll be a king without a throne. O Brother Where Art Thou uses 2 different ticking clock mechanisms, one in the front and one behind. In 4 days, the TVA is going to flood the valley where the treasure is hidden, while the sheriff is 1 step behind them the entire journey. The combination of these 2 ticking clocks is sprinkled throughout the entire movie every time the group takes a break to remind them they have to keep moving. The hobbits don't look like they have a literal countdown, but there are lots of elements reminding Sam and Frodo that they cannot take a few days off. The watchful eye of Sauron never does. Between the Nazgul orc hunting parties and the ring corrupting Frodo, they all present opportunities for them to instantly fail their quest should they take too long or even slow their pace. Peter Jackson even makes a change from the books to add more urgency, showing Frodo a vision of the Shire burning should he delay too long. With the ticking clock pushing them forward, there now needs to be a reason for the heroes to stop at all those cool islands you came up with earlier. No, you can't just take the Eagles the whole way to Mount Doom. In most settings, you can use the natural geography for this, with minimal roads or adding a mountain range with only 1 or 2 passes, or even just making it physically impossible to skip sections because the entire setting is a terrain. There's also narrative explanations, like how the ring would have tempted the Eagles, or how Sauron would have just seen them coming and they'd just be killed by the Nazgul. But if you want to have your Odyssey in the open ocean, the desert, or in space, and you still want the travelers to make those stops along the way, the best tool for the job is a lack of resources. This is why post-apocalyptic settings are so popular with Odysseys. It's easy to say there's a lack of food, fuel, or maybe they need to gear up as they travel because something dangerous waits at the destination. The lack of resources serves as a reminder that your party can't just go straight to their destination, as well as an easy motivator for side quests and exploration. In the Odyssey, the lack of food is the reason they have to keep stopping. Everett and the Chain Gang need money and a vehicle in order to keep moving, both of which they tend to lose as soon as they get it. Frodo and Sam's Limbus bread running out is an obvious example here, as this ends up being the tool Gollum uses to drive a wedge between them. Of course, resources need tracking. The D&D version of tracking resources has a lot of math and encumbrance and stuff like that, so feel free to steal from any other system. The progress clocks from Blade in the Dark are my favorite, and they're simple and streamlined, or you can do what most of us do and steal skill challenges from 4th edition D&D. Here's a video by Matt Colville, which is how most of us actually found out about them. In every Odyssey, there is a looming threat or powerful presence that the heroes are in a constant struggle to fight or avoid. This is what makes the spaces between your islands feel dangerous, yet another element that pushes the travelers forward. But every time they advance, there's a chance of being snared by a threat they can't fight. The open expanse of the ocean between Odysseus and his home is not the real danger, it's the wrath of Zeus and Poseidon. The gods in your world don't have to be actual gods. The Eye of Sauron is to Sam and Frodo what the Law is to Everett, Pete, and Delmer. That constant threat that ties it all together, but one they can never directly deal with because of how one-sided that fight would be. With the narrative weight of an entire journey now behind you, the finale must be something worth that journey. I can't tell you what your finale should be, but there are some elements that should probably be incorporated here. My favorite element of almost every Odyssey in modern media is the twist ending. The destination isn't what you hoped it would be, and there's almost always one final trial. In Nolan's Odyssey, Odysseus returns home to find that Penelope has now issued a challenge to her suitors, one that he decides to complete and also deal with them at the same time. In O Brother, Where Art Thou, we find out that Everett's treasure doesn't actually exist. He was lying, and he actually broke out of jail to stop his wife from marrying another man.
I had to tell you something. Busting out alone was not an option.
By the time Sam and Frodo reach the fires of Mount Doom, the ring has corrupted Frodo, and it's not as simple as just tossing it in.
The ring is mine.
The second element, it all comes together. Little things from the journey compile to make the finale even more cathartic and satisfying. This is undoubtedly your most difficult job as a DM, but if you want your players' decisions to matter to their story, and you should, connecting these dots is worth doing, even if it sometimes feels a little forced. The radio station where Everett and the gang became the Soggy Bottom Boys ends up being very important, as it allows them to earn their pardon from the incumbent governor. Because Frodo wouldn't allow Samwise to kill Gollum, Gollum plays a huge part in their finale when Frodo, changes his mind. Agamemnon's death and encounter in the Land of the Dead gives Odysseus valuable insight on how he should approach his home, not as a king, but as a beggar. As a DM, you have the opportunity to plant seeds and connections throughout all your islands that won't make this finale feel forced, but instead feel like a direct result of the actions of your players and the choices that they made along the way. If it makes sense for your setting, there's a few extras you can add in to make your Odyssey even more fun and dynamic. A vehicle, a spelljammer, a car, a spaceship shaped like a hot dog, a covered wagon. Having a vessel gives the travelers something to maintain, protect, and possibly upgrade, depends on the setting you're in. A crew. While not essential to every Odyssey, this one makes a real difference. They can offer assistance and manpower for certain things, but they also require more food and more resources. Having a crew also incentivizes your travelers to adopt NPCs into the crew as they move throughout the world. If resources get low and pressure rises, the crew could decide to sell them out, or even mutiny. They may even reach out to one party member and tell them they'll follow them instead of their current leader, whoever that happens to be. They probably won't bite on this, but it makes the voyage feel real and like their previous decisions have made an impact on the crew down the road. Now you have the essential elements needed to craft your own Odyssey for your players. If you've run an Odyssey in your game or just have a favorite Odyssey example you want to mention, it'd be super helpful if you drop the details about it in the comments. Like I said, I've been toying with the idea of running an Odyssey-style campaign in D&D for a few years now. I was initially inspired by Frodo and Sam's journey from Lord of the Rings, but the real excitement came from the first time that I watched that Snowpiercer movie. You should watch it. If you're looking for an actual play to watch that uses the Odyssey story structure, Dimension 20's Starstruck Odyssey is a great one, and is also packed full of inspiration. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and hopefully it enables you to tell an Odyssey story at your table. And at the end of the day, your Odyssey, your story, is all that matters. This has been Tabletop University. I've been Sam. Thank you to our sponsor, Hitplay Pulse. Don't forget to use that link below to join their mailing list. You can stay informed about launch dates, beta testing updates, and early bird rewards. And as always, thank you to my patrons for their support, and thank you so much for watching.